saber que tenemos intérprete en inglés. I would like to inform everyone who might be watching us and would like to join us in the English channel. At the bottom, you will see an interpretation globe where you can select English. Nuestra intérprete nos está dejando saber.
Ahora sí. Ahora sí. So now we're starting our meeting. Jimena was explaining how we're going to start this meeting. This is a different meeting because I'm going to be interpreting simultaneously in English. I usually do it in Spanish. I'm sorry. So now she's going to introduce herself, Jimena Gomez, coordinator for the wellness of the Petaluma City Schools districts. I'm going to be receiving all our students in the wellness area. I'm going to inform, like as I was saying, it's not a regular forum. It's more like a webinar. So we're not going to be able to hear you. You're not going to have the function the function to lift your hand, raise your hand. But you can post in the Q&As. You can make questions there, and they're going to be answered. Jimena is bilingual, so she will be able to do it in Spanish and in English. Again, this meeting is different because I'm going to be interpreting in English, from Spanish to English. I hope you're all having a great night. I'm very happy for this presentation full in Spanish for tonight. And if someone is hearing me on the English channel, it would be nice if you could put it in the chat so I can make sure that I'm being heard. Oh, sorry, I know you don't have the chat options, so the Q&A. Oh, thank you very much, Robert. We're gonna wait a few minutes. We're gonna have our Dr. Marisol Muñoz-Kine. She's a psychologist, a community clinical psychologist. She contributes to human for the well-being through teaching. 30 years of experience in mental health and community engagement. She has provided information and inspiration through radio, podcast, Nuestros Niños, Our Bodies, Nuestro Corazón en la Comunidad, Our Bodies in the Community. Other TV shows and videos program for more than 15 years. She has taught in various universities. She speaks in conferences and community events. And she writes and prints on digital outlets. Hundreds of her articles and dozens of her books are like short stories and poems have been published. Her work has won national, regional, and local awards and the appreciation of many. And thank you very much, Marisol. So now you have the word. She's very thankful to all of us, our parents of families. It's a privilege and a pleasure to be here with you, to chat with you, share with you part of what I have been learning during the years. Life in communication. Communication is a very important matter and very wide and open. We have till midnight. Oh, she's choking. She says, not 7:30, we're gonna turn into a pumpkin, or it's like Cinderella. So several things she will say in Spanish is gonna be hard to pass them in English. But then she's commenting on how she's gonna share slides. She's gonna make pauses to thank to your kids, to your daughters, to your sons, because as busy we are, as much as we work as parents, and we need to find the time to be able to participate in webinars as this one.
Y lo importante que son para ustedes. Quizás cuando estén grandes ya les darán las gracias cuando les traigan nietos, pero por ahora, en nombre de ellos, le agradezco yo por estar aquí con este tema. Pasamos entonces, comparto pantalla. Vamos
Sí,
entonces.
todo tuyo.
Dice que no puedo compartir pantalla todavía.
Listo, ya te debe dejar.
Ahora sí.
Perfecto.
Estos robots nos ayudan con la comunicación y a veces cuando no funcionan nos ponen desesperados, pero no vamos ni a desesperarnos ni a desesperanzarnos, sino que vamos con calma, control, cerebro y corazón a abordar al tema de la comunicación. Pusieron conversaciones sanas con nuestros hijos, con nuestras hijas. Y quiero recalcar que cuando hablamos de conversación, aquí vienen algunas de las C.
Perdonen, se me cortó el internet o algo pasó. Sí. I'm sorry, I had some issues with my internet and connection. Here I am. So Marisol was sharing how talking to our kids, communicating, connecting with compassion and comprehension towards them. Can you hear me now? And I'm sorry about my internet. I don't know what happened. Persisting with patience, persevering. We're going to continue with communications, healthy communications, with connection. Again, comprehension and compassion. So we're going to start. What are some of the key points we're going to talk in this kind of webinar? So this is what I'm going to say. Communication. The communication is the base of any relationship, not only family, but also friendships and other affective relationships. It's a super survival and ability. It's also with problems in communications. Sorry, she speaks really fast, but communication is a principal conflict, and then you have many benefits and advantages when you have a good communication. So as parents, we need to share those three E's, she says: experiences, examples, and sorry, she moved. Now, productive practice to resolve problems. Listening, understand. With exercises, you can be able how to use your voice, because our voice is like a vitamin, it's like a, but our words also can be like poison, so we need to be careful. So we're gonna use, what are those practices that we need to use to be productive and prevent problems? How to talk about harder conversations, how to have difficult conversations. Some of those, for example, I use some slides, but let me know if some of those slides are hard to understand. She's telling us especially. We're going to talk about principles and practices and using those tools and ideas. I hope during this hour and a half, you can get out with some action and towards communications, action tools. What are those tools? They are not the ones you find on Home Depot. These are better. These communications are the ones, they have a better foundation as human beings, and they're not expensive. They come preset with ourselves. As grown-ups, we want to be connected. And that's the C for connecting with our arms. We need to remember the R's for a reason. You can see the R in the head. You can see the E in the body. And that's the stomach and the intestines. And then another C again with the arms. You see two C's connecting. And then the legs are the values. through culture, integration. Most our parents, we include respect and responsibility. That's why you see 2 R's on the legs and the body. So we're going to show you how to use these tools, give you examples, and we're going to use also those examples for the kids. We're going to teach our kids how to use the reasoning, the emotional being, and the responsibility and the communication, the same letter she used for the grown-up body. When we use thinking, before the next topic, we're going to start thinking. Before talking, we need to start thinking. Our communication starts with using your head. Use your brain, the gray matter, remember, reasoning, and resolving. Those are the 3 R's. So first, you need to close your mouth. Before thinking, before talking, you need to think. So close your mouth, she said. We're going to remember, when we talk about remember, you're going to think about your own memories, your own experiences as a child. And then when you're going to use the reasoning to be able to decide, to think, plan, and then think what we're going to say, what words I'm going to use. Take a moment to think, to practice, to say what I'm going to say. And the last, resolve. If we remember and we reason, we are a human being that can think, and we can solve some doubts. The problems and conflicts will be resolved wisely. Sometimes we talk without thinking, at least without thinking enough. So let's use our brain. But we're not a robot or computer. We're going to use, like we said, our heart too, our feelings, the emotional intelligence, like the E was in the middle of the body. And then we include the emotion, the intuition. So how do I feel? What do I feel? How I'm going to accept that feeling and how I'm going to express that feeling. So it's very different if I'm upset or mad than if I'm happy. Sometimes that heartbeat or that sense as a mother, that extra, that feeling we have sometimes as a mother or as a father, or that intuition she's talking, will guide our kids to understand. So please listen to your heart, recognize what you feel. Breathe deep from your stomach, slowly and profound, deep. Then you're going to bring oxygen to your brain, and that will help you to calm, think clearly, and express the emotion without losing your mind. And then you also have like that, listen to your intuition, but you know your kids. You know your kids better than others. You have to validate that intuition. So listen to that intuition. That will help you at the time when it comes to communicate with your child. We think, we feel. What else are we going to do before talking? In communications, it's proved that more than 80% goes beyond words. It's not what I say, it's not what I say, it's how I say it. It's not what I see, it's how I feel. So we need to use our eyes. That is, oh, sorry, I cannot say those things in English, but so if you see clearly, you can see how they really are, how they feel. And our eyes are going to have they're going to reach to a point, and two pair of eyes sees better than one. That's a saying that I can translate. The other one, it was impossible. I'm so sorry. And she speaks really fast too. So when you say, thank you for informing me. So when your child communicates, always praise them and say, thank you for letting me know. We're going to see what is present and what is absent in their behavior, in the way they look, the way they show us. Sometimes our kids make some changes in their behavior, and we don't notice that maybe because we see them on a daily basis. So sometimes when I see they're changing, it's because they're growing up. But sometimes it can also be that, like a big change in their behavior can also show us some trouble coming, or so observing. Looking is one of the things she's saying, using our eyes, like she said before, and then noting if there is anything atypical. And now she uses the quote like, there is no worse people, there is no one worse than the one that doesn't want to hear, says here, the quote. So listen with attention. And she uses listening, not just hearing. So who doesn't listen to advice would not grow old. Sorry, these are the kind of quotes that are difficult to translate. And sometimes if we know how to listen to others, we will save some negative situations. So when we are listening, if we're listening, we can follow advices and we are more open. So what is listening? We breathe deep because it's harder than what it seems. Yeah, she's saying that these quotes are hard to. If our kid is talking, what is he saying? What is she saying? I don't want to go to my uncle's house. Is it the same? I don't want to go. Or is her body language is showing shy and upset. So if we observe and we really listen, not just hear, listen, the body language, the tone is sending us the message. So if we really want to know them and connect and have a trusting nexus, link with them, we need to listen because they have things to tell us, a lot of things to tell us, and things that are important for them. And take those things with serious matters. Also, besides listening, is to pay attention, to be attentive, to what are the things that we do regularly, frequently. So how do we listen to their complaints, to their stories, their new events in their life? And that will help us when we need to communicate and listen and pay attention to more complex situations. So now we're going to talk about how to pay attention, listening with ears and ears that it takes to listen properly, and our attention when it's thought and when it's filled, that attention. So one of the ways is to reflect that. For example, if the child is manifesting, some friend doesn't want to play with me, is it the same? Like, oh, it's happy with a happy expression. That friend doesn't want to play with me. So if we repeat what we heard, we need to check if we heard properly. So, she's using terms that are impossible to translate to English. It's like saying that kid or that other kid. So when the body language shows happiness, when that kid doesn't want to play with me, the kid will understand that we got their message properly. The emotional state is different when it's sad than when it's happy. So then we're going to use other examples. The idea is that when it comes to listening, are we able and we are open to listen to what is important? Are we going to listen the words, but the message beyond the words? Are we going to listen to the tones, to the gestures? Are we going to listen to the feelings? We're going to listen to their experiences, about their interests that are always changing through time, their opinions. Do they have some kind of proposals, ideas, sometimes political ideas that we might get surprised? They already start thinking on their own how to have their own experiences and opinions. So we're going to do this as a practical. So let's say our kids are having a conversation that we are worried. We're not going to go running. We're not going to talk to them when we are busy, probably preparing dinner. So that conversation will take place in a proper time when the phones are off. And we're going to respect that moment of talking to each other, looking at our eyes, having an eye connection, because if we continue doing something else, it's like not proper. And then she mentions that it's not also necessary to stare at each other very hard, but normally like sitting one in front of the other, making eye contact, and listen to what the kids said. And then repeat to them, did you say this? Just to confirm. And then, when this happens, that you say, you feel like this. So you validate their feeling. And then we talk about emotional intelligence. Like we said, it's not the same when the expression, the tone is sad than when it's happy, when it's fierce. There are a lot of emotions and feelings involved. So we name the emotion. Do you feel this? To make sure and confirm. These kind of tools of communications that we're teaching our kids, but it also applies to our partners and to our neighbors. So at the end, when we repeat as a part, like a parrot, you repeat, this is what you felt, and you put the name, then they can correct to us and say, yes, that's what I was trying to say. And then you continue, probably that will open up the conversation to continue talking. And it will continue like progressing. So here's like a little test for our parents to evaluate ourselves. How much do we know? How much do I know you now in this moment? So sometimes we think our kids' favorite color is this or pink or blue, and we assume. So let's try to have like an interview to our kids. Do you know what their favorite food? What's their favorite music? What are their favorite friends or closest friends? What are the people they don't like? Do you know what they fear? Do you know what when they sick and what kind of medicine they take? Do you know the name of their doctors and teachers? Do you know what classes are they taking? What kind of homework they like better? Which ones they don't like? So in the afternoon, we can learn about those things when they come back from school. What are the things that they make them happy? What are the things that they worry? What are the things that they are mad about? And what are the things that they fear? What do they dream with? And what do they hope for? So, for example, your child might say, I want to be a YouTuber. So, yeah, tell me more about it. Tell me about what you dream about. What is your inspiration? Who's the person you admire? The same, you can put it towards sports, for example. And that way you get to know our kids. So it's through the conversation that we sit down at the table in the afternoon and we start talking and chatting. And for example, they're playing video games. So what is in the video game? What's happening? Who's the main character? And you get interest into their world. So we just talk quickly about importance of communication and how to communicate, comprehending, understanding connection between the brain, the heart, listening, and seeing. I'm gonna make a pause to see if there is any comment, any question, any correction.
Doctora Marisol, sí tenemos.
There is a question, Jimena says.
Dice que,
It says,
doctor,
when we have a child
un hijo
that
renuente a
recurring,
escuchar los consejos,
that is not willing to listen to our advices
malos hábitos,
about regards to their friendships or their bad habits, and those that are adopting, the ones they're choosing in their life in that moment. So what can we do with our child when they don't listen, they're not receptive to our advices? And she says, all generations and adolescents, and they think they are right. Grown-ups are not updated. They don't know how to do things, how to think. They believe it's a different gap of communication and age. So how do we listen? How do we help them to listen? So sometimes I'm going to be harder. I'm going to talk to them today longer, or that's not a good advice. I'm not going to talk to you. We are going to talk. I'm not going to go talk to you. We are going to talk. Let's talk. Because the only way they're going to listen to us is if we show them how to listen. If we are open and receptive to listen to them, we need to show them that. So if we sit down and we lecture them, what is a good relationship, what is a bad friendship, they're going to just come through one ear and get out through the other one. It's going to be, so we need to have conversations about what friendship is, what values and relationships are, what is trust. And then if they start talking about other people, even if it's not their own experience, we are going to learn from their environment. As parents, we need to know that, of course, we do have, as grown-ups, experience, but if we are open and receptive to listen from them, maybe we can even ask permission to say, you want to know what I think about that? Maybe I can share what I think about this or that, instead of going with an imposing lecture or imposing a conversation from one end. That will build trust, because if we're really listening, we're going to be a better communicating. We're going to be able to see something they share with us about their friendship. Because sometimes when you say, like, when I was younger, this happened to me, maybe that's boring for our children. But yes, sometimes it's valid to say, for example, when I go to work, I do feel this and that, because that's something more actual. So now she's mentioning how in future examples, we're gonna get a better context on how to attend these worrisome situations as parents we have. We're gonna continue. There are some other questions that you can post in the Q&A, remember? Jimena can read and translate in English too. It's very important to call things by their name. She mentions bread, wine, but it doesn't apply in English, sorry again. So calling things for the name. So when we talk about sexuality, for example, and body parts, we need to use the correct words. We don't need to use also the complex anatomy, body words, but yes, the ones that are the way we name things, or body parts. She's mentioning about Isabel Allende, which is a famous writer who was. There is another saying that when you have a mouth, you can also be mistaken. And then she's talking about when somebody repeats what somebody else said, there is a miscommunication. So when we talk, we need to practice. Another saying is practice. Platicar is to talk. So speaking and talking to instruct ourselves, we need to learn to talk, to use the correct words for communication. Speaking, written, and social media, for example, there are a lot of words that so if we talk at home about these practices, about our abilities and communications and conversations, this, for example, she's mentioning when you talk to your children, when your child, when it's a baby, don't have a baby voice and use that is nice as a playing situation, but when you want your child to develop their language, you need to talk to them in the proper word. So you need to use very wisely your words and communicate appropriately in regards to vocabulary and language. So it's very important to include, to show like an illustration and to ask the questions. So who cares? So me with my own teenager, let's say, or me with my partner, or maybe your ex-husband. So then you need to include someone else. So you need to include in the conversation people that have something to contribute to the dialogue. Sometimes that I don't see your faces, it's harder because, for example, I cannot see your expressions. So teach them with an example. That will be the middle word, that is to illustrate them, how to teach them. And that is setting and being the model, a role model. So it's very different to say in a theory, good friendships are if they do this and that. But that rather than saying, for example, the proper way will be, your friend is a good friend because look, he's doing this. So that is an example that is literal, So he's showing you friendship, a good friendship, by doing this action, for example. If I'm saying, we see this in a movie, and then we can also talk about things that are in a movie, for example, different scenarios. She's using examples as to illustrate, for example, a situation in a movie. Or if you're watching the news and then you see that bad news affect the kids, and it gives them sometimes nightmares. So you're watching, let's say, the news, and you see a situation that is hard, so then you need to talk about that. So what happened? Why the kid is crying in the TV? Oh, what's going on? And then you bring like a memory. When we watched that memory, we were sad. She's talking about Bambi, the movie. And she's talking about how Bambi reflects death. And so she brings up that example to talk about an accident if they saw that a house burning, let's say, on the news. So you bring something they know to share, to bring the example that is in the TV in that moment, that is a live experience. And also, we don't want to point them out with like an interrogation. So it's to use open questions. Yes, also to use open questions, open-ended questions, sorry. So what do you think about that? And that is an open question that doesn't go to yes or no. She touched something and she went back to the beginning of the presentation. An open-ended questions is a question that can be replied in many words. You know, she's explaining what open-ended questions are. Open-ended questions get to know each other better because you're not giving just two options or yes or no. So make sure you use open-ended questions to open up the dialogue and the conversation. When it comes to having conversations, you can use where, when, and where. Then again, use your head. Answer calm, with clarity. If you're as calm as possible and clear as possible when your conversation and your communication, if we speak like excited and a rush and like hurry you're already having a detonated conversation probably with them. We can also use stories, we can use drawings and demonstrations. But if we show them with toys, with stories, with drawings, so what happened? What happened in that situation that you're telling me? Where were you? Like, give me, can you draw this situation for me? And here we go to messages that include the I. When we want to give them advices, communicate with our children, it's like, you need to do this, you need to do that. We use a lot the you. So that puts people in defensive. Nobody wants to be called out. Ideally, we're going to speak from our own perspective, from our own experience. So you're going to say, I feel this way when you do that. I think this when you don't do that. Then you say, I will also prefer, I also need. If we use those terms, the other person will not be as defensive. We're not criticizing. They're going to notice we are not. We're just saying what we feel. I need. And in that way, they can answer open. Give me 1 minute.
Dar más ejemplos, pero esa es una de las claves que si podemos utilizarla hasta en las relaciones de trabajo pueden servirnos, porque nuevamente estamos diciendo lo que está pasando en mi experiencia y la otra persona al que le caiga el saco como se lo ponga, como dicen. Si no me pausan, sigo así. Idealmente, vamos a hacer prácticamente, estamos necesitando hablar con uno de nuestros hijos, un par de nuestros hijos. Están en medio de un videojuego.
So we need to talk to one of our children, for example, and they're not paying attention, especially if we're talking from the kitchen, let's say, and they're watching TV in the living room. We are going to call them by their name. Sometimes they need like a little touch in their elbows and say, hey, to call their attention. Once we have that attention, we're going to do what we said. We're going to talk. We are not just talking ourselves, one person, not a monologue, but both dialogue. This is what I feel when this happens. Always communicating our love, our connection. Besides, we are probably upset or frustrated or worrisome. Always connect. I love you. So I love you, and because I care about you, is that we need to have a conversation why we're saying no, for example. If they ask questions, that is like a big thing, very good. They will answer. So the children that do ask questions, that means they're thinking, they are having a comprehension, and they are able to ask something because they can have a perspective from. So they bring that question, and sometimes it's like we get scared about it. I don't have the answer. Maybe I don't know how to answer that. Sometimes there are some delicate questions they can bring. And especially because probably during your childhood, nobody will let you ask those questions, but you're allowed to say, I don't know, but I will tell you what I think. Or you can say, we can also go find for an answer if I don't know it. And basically, and the most important, if we need to say the truth, even if the truth it means I don't know, it's better than if we just tell them just a lie or a story. They will notice when we don't know about some topics. For example, if you talk about drugs, if they ask about drugs, have you ever used drugs? Or have you been with somebody else than my dad? So sometimes you can say, this is not the moment to speak about this. Dr. Marisol is asking, how do you think? So she's making like a quiet moment because she wants to show us it's important sometimes to make a pause and be quiet and listen. So now she's making that pause to see if we want to say something. She's giving us some space. Some of the panelists are sharing comments. We cannot see you, but your message is very clear. So thank you very much. We are learning about these communication practices and also have messages being very thankful about this webinar. And also I would like to let them know if you want to talk. I think at the end of the presentation, we can let you participate with a voice and speak up, maybe to interact, and the Dr. Marisol be able to listen to you. That will be nice. And she's text is wonderful. Some people that not see her, but depending on the device you're using, you might not see me, but I was making all this kind of expression and body languages. I hope this conversation can be of much help for you. What I can say, we need to be open and receptive to listen. And this is important when they are doing something that is good. We need to tell them, we need to congratulate to them. Positive reinforcing will be the term. Because that will give them confidence and to continue being open. Maybe this is something that is more explicit, as I said in the beginning. This is like a gift of what I learned. Every one of you is going to adapt or adopt and adapt situations to your own cases. Nobody knows better your situation, so you will use these tools the best you can based on your situation at home. So some of the tools might be helpful now, some others might be helpful in other moment.
Doctora, solo para clarificar que si te están viendo, simplemente.
Yes, some people can see her. Jimena is confirming that there was a person in the audience that's saying I couldn't see you, but it was because she was probably on another device. But we can see her. Yes, Jimena is confirming that. Dr. Marisol is saying that she's using a lot of her hands and body language. That's a good comment. Sometimes we are able to see each other, all of us in Zoom, and that is distracting. And she's sharing when she was in school and some experience. So she's going to continue. So we are in the part that we're talking. For example, having those open-ended questions. And that are very, very helpful. Because it will help the other person to open up into a deeper conversation. And how was your day? So what do you think about certain things? What about this example? How do you feel? Tell me, explain to me. I like those other ones because they're not even questions. Explain to me. Tell me about it. Tell me more about it. And sometimes they do feel like, oh, we are getting, sometimes with questions were like in an interrogatory. But if we say, hey, explain to me, let me know better about how is your world? Let me know about your things. And then we need to be quiet and be able to listen. So it's important sometimes in adolescence that we are talking to them, but sometimes being next to them, like driving in the car. It's a good situation, a scenario. Like going to the beach, let's say, and you're talking. And then suddenly probably they're sharing about their own things. Another technique is to drive their friends in their car, and it's like they forget about you in the car, and then you will learn about their life, their school, because they're going to start chatting, and you're a witness, a first-hand witness, listening. And then you can talk about that in a private situation. Another tool that can be very helpful is like adopting more like a American meeting, like a productive practice, it will be. That's more American, she mentioned. Productive pláticas, all the P's, PP, all those P's, presence. We need to have a conversation. Oh, it's going to be a complaint. We're going to lose our time. And we're not going to be having a productive conversation. So we're going to change that. And we start with that. Who needs to be present in that conversation? Sometimes it has to be the whole family. Let's say if we all share a house or we're a big family, who needs to be present? So we start with positive reinforcing, like we say, not starting with a problem, don't go with a negative aspect of the conversation, but with a positive, being prepared. So for that, having a positive aspect of or reinforcing concept will open up to the listening. We talk about being thankful. We talk about happiness. So this person is not coming aggressive. Being positive means that this is going to be a nice conversation. Then we mention about the problems, but we're not going to say you are the problem here. The problem is here. We have a problem at home, or we have a problem. Let's say we are arriving late. We all arrive late to work, to school, and then you're claiming you're always too long in the bathroom. It takes long for you to wake up. So everyone can bring a proposal, let's say. For example, somebody can say, I want, I don't know, a new iPhone because I would have a better alarm to wake up. So then, okay, so then an alarm will help you wake up. So then she tells that it doesn't need to be the last model of the iPhone to have an alarm. And then we make a plan. What will be the next steps that we are going to practice and implement? So let's say this family has decided on Sundays we're going to have, let's say, a meal. And after the meal, we're going to talk, let's have a conversation. But not a conversation like a serious conversation. When she says to platicar, it's just to chat. And then we all get out of that conversation with something positive and something constructive that can apply to the problem the family is dealing with. So she's asking how this feels to you. When there is, if you have comments, you are open to put them in the Q&A. She's just checking with you if you need some clarification, how you think about what she's saying. And then you can also try this, like she said, use these tools in your own conversation. So ideally, those practice conversations, you can have them on a weekly basis, or you can use them when you have a problem to resolve. You don't need to start taking notes during those conversations. Let's say, for example, we cannot go on vacations because there is no enough budget, but we can go on a camping. So every one of you can have your opinion. What do you think about this? Then being positive, problems, then proposals, then deciding, like we said, proposing plans, next steps, and then a pleasant activity. These communications techniques will help them in their life, when they're at work, when they have important conversations, important relationships. They will be able to maintain, with good conversations, to maintain a good health partner or a good work relation. So we're going to answer some questions. We're going to communicate what we feel, what we think, but we'll also give them some retroalimentación. Will be like a feedback. We are going to make some comments that show, are you special or you're just ordinary as anyone else? Do you value or you feel you're not worth it? Is it well said or just saying whatever comes to your mind without thinking? Is it well done or are you making a mess about it? I believe in you. Try. Or are you saying you can't, you will fail? Are you saying I trust you, or are you saying I don't trust you? So sometimes We need to make them feel, we need to make sure that they know and they feel that we are on their side, that we are next to them, that we are next to them no matter what. We're unconditional. We need to make nice comments. And sometimes, for different reasons, the world will give them a message. And these messages are not the ones they need to be said, like you're special, you're worth it, well done, well said, try harder. But sometimes it takes practice, to use these tools. So now it's very important to remember what we want to avoid. What are we going to try to avoid and not to use? Because the tongue can hurt, the words can hurt. So being alert. Be careful when you're talking. There are some obstacles to a good open conversation. It can debilitate, like it can be weak. Sometimes when we are threatening, we're making judgments, when we're using the critics, when we laugh about it and we humiliate, we need to avoid all those. And it would be nice if we could use a video or a recording in our house and forget about that is there, and then go and observe what we said, how we said it. Were we giving a lecture? Were we laughing about some situations? Maybe sometimes we do it without meaning it, but what are the things we need to reduce? What are the things that we need to stop doing? Not only with our kids, but also with our partners or other relationships. A little bit more of what we need to avoid. How would you feel if somebody's always bossing you? Or ignoring you, or threatening you, or rejecting you, or lecturing, like we said, or questioning all the time, criticizing all the time, judging, making you feel ridiculous, humiliate, attacking, or making you feel guilty, or blaming you. Now she's speaking about critics. I'm going to be more aware of when I do critique. When I critique, that is an example. So when the communication breaks, is you need to fix it and heal it. If we don't recognize what we did wrong, we will not be able to repair. So I'm going to try to critique less. Sometimes, if I feel like if I don't yell, nobody listens. So maybe changing that yelling to a good communication tone will be helpful for the communication. And we're going to show them also how to say, I was wrong, I'm sorry. For example, things that help, things that don't help. The communication can nurture love, self-esteem. Not to make them feel it's to make them feel important, not to make them feel like extra or feeding their ego, but we are giving them a good, healthy self-esteem. So she says, things that we need to avoid is also when we reject. Sometimes we make a difference among our children. So they call attention and they say, maybe I'm adopted because you treat me different than my brother or sister. That kind of rejection they feel can be something they're being hurt. Also, if we treat them with despise and we don't support them. So in this house is our refuge, is our safety place. This is where you can be yourself, and will make them feel home, and the trusting aspect, like we said before. Be careful using names or tags or no, she's saying how you use words naming. But if they feel like it's not a nice name that we're using for our children, for example, those names can go other things communicating, so make sure you change that. Also be careful with the threatening. If you're giving an advice, if you do this, that's going to happen. That's a good thing to say. A consequence is different than threatening. So if we make a promise, we do comply with it. But it's different than just to threat. And especially when the threat is, I'm going to leave you, or, well, it doesn't apply in English. I'm going to send you back. I don't know where, but it's like, so when you tell them something so negative in that thread, it doesn't help. She's talking about her own personal experience, about her mom. So her mom used to tell her, I found you at Sears, and at Sears I'm going to return you. And she never felt comfortable at those stores because her mom used the store like, oh, I picked you up there, I'm going to drop you off there, as a threat. Or, for example, I'm going to go take you to Jalisco, and you mention Jalisco as a bad thing, then that child is not going to like Jalisco ever. Also, be careful making comparisons, comparing, yeah. We're all different. Like our fingers in our hand, we have a center, but they're all different. When we say, you should be like, I don't know, you're this person, when you say that, it doesn't work. And it doesn't help with the trust and being connected. Do we like when somebody else gets compared with somebody else? Especially when it's among siblings. You don't want that rivalry. We don't use those comparisons. And being perfectionist also. Are we all perfect? No, we fail as human beings. So if we have a high expectation that are impossible to reach, we are not going to have a good connection of trust. As we said, yes, trust, yes, hope, yes, value their effort, but not to communicate that we love them only if they're perfect. We're going to make like a little pause to see questions, corrections. We have a very beautiful comment. It's true, I'm reflecting about this, and I do identify with what you're saying. So that's why I'm here. How can I change my actual attitude with my daughter? How to talk to her? And even though I'm not in agreement with her friendships or with the way she's dressing and expressions, thank you for giving me this chat. This conversation, I really appreciate. And what Dr. Marisol is saying, that it would be nice if she opened up that comment to her daughter. to be able to say, I would like to be more reflective in our communications. And that will be important for me because you are important for me. So that way you are showing how you are probably failing and communicate. So sometimes going to parents therapies or parent classes is good. And then she's remembering a situation like going to those parenting classes, for example. And if the children are nearby, they'll say, hey, you need to continue going to those parenting classes. In those comments, she said, it's true, I'm reflecting about this and I identify with what you're saying. And she was mentioning how she didn't like how her daughter dresses. So it applies. In the moment of criticizing, we lose, we waste energy and connection when we pay attention to details that are not really important. New generations, especially adolescents, they create their own, they all have their own fashion, their own style. And unless it's something that gets them into danger, unless it's something like a color that can get them into trouble when there is gang-related situations. But using their hair on a certain way or certain color, in fact, what she's saying is to choose your battles. Choose things that are important and not to be that like a machine that says no to everything. And choose when it's important to express yourself, like when it's something more dangerous, for example. So let's say, for example, about clothing, no? She said the way she dresses. If I'm going to be buying clothes to you, I will feel safer. You use this than that you're showing a lot your body, you can set up limits, but we need to learn to give them their own space and express themselves, even if we don't like it. There are a lot of things we do that they don't like. So it's true that Jimena says. I'm watching the clock, she says. And there is another question that is at the end because it's deeper. It is a little bit more complicated. So she left a question. Jimena says she's also a mom and she wants to share that sometimes she notices she commits mistakes. So she's very thankful that you brought that conversation, because sometimes we don't want to see where we fail. So that advice about leaving a recording device and then go and listen to and see what are we saying wrong, what we're doing wrong. Also during parenting classes, she gives materials and then she gives them like a homework to take home. And at home they share, oh, this is what they say. Do I do this? And then with their kid, they check, yes, mom, you do often threaten me, for example, or and be able to share those things, empower our kids, and they think we can get better. So the other exercises I provided about getting to know them, like the interviewing, and they can use it with us too, so they get to know us better too. It's like changing roles, what she's saying. in a playful way, no? She knows that that topic that was the question that is in the chat about depression is a deeper question, it's a deeper comment. When there are mental health in the family, you suffer a lot, and it's very important to be familiar and recognizes what are those alerts, because our children can be developing some mental health situations. Some situations have gone deeper during the pandemic, and certain segmented groups have suffered deeper than others. So these depressions and these situations need to be observed, because you need to pay attention. Observe how their anemic state changes. So we need to listen to them. Maybe their way they talk is very there is a lot of lack of hope, or they are not animated, they don't seem happy, or there is a lot of bullying going on at school, or you can listen.
Para automedicarse, para ahogar las penas, para calmarse, para animarse, para dejar de oír voces. Así que eso es mucha tela para cortar, y podemos hacer prácticas específicas sobre eso si gustan en el futuro, pero qué bueno que están pendientes. Recurran a la escuela, recurran a la clínica comunitaria, no importa la situación migratoria o la aseguranza, la salud mental es parte de la salud integral. Y no podemos...
I'm sorry, I'm coughing and I muted myself and then I couldn't unmute. So she's explaining, Marisol is explaining how the behavior is affecting our functioning. We are going to give you a few more tips. Another one is about the phones and their tablets. With these devices are very useful, smartphones and tablets or computers. You use the C's. What? Well, la cantidad, she's talking all about C's, words with C, like cat. So she's mentioning how important those devices can be, and be familiar with devices. So the quality, and then the C of company, supervise with them. And then she uses the word creative. She's mentioning how to use devices maybe to develop some creativity activities, but not to forget to go to outside places like the zoo. And then she's using other words that is conscious and company. Is I choose when and how I'm going to use those devices, because she says they are like a knife. Because as a knife, you're not going to give a knife to your child, so you need to be there helping them to use those devices. They are so overstimulating them with the young ones. So she's referring as the devices. You need to be careful, so you need to give them like special kids knife, something that is safer. So you use shorter times, hours on the device, and we need to be an example also, because we are using all the time our devices. So are we using it in a compulsive way? So we are the role model, she says. And then there are other ways that we can use with other tools. besides the digital world. Another important topic is to talk about sex, sexuality, some ideas. When there is communication among parents and children, the children tend to postpone their sexual initiation and prevents pregnancies. So sometimes it's important to start the topic, even if we are shy about it, to start talking, to name the body parts, to name the sexual act, and not to name as little bird to the penis or put names to the sexual body parts. To be able to open about everything, menstruation, pregnancies, anticonceptive pills or masturbations or ESTs, it will be. Using books, websites, very useful resources to explain and illustrate, because as you can see, digestive systems, you can also talk about sexual systems. And then to discuss consequences can be hard and they are forever. And then speak about respect, responsibility, about their own bodies, about other people's bodies, teach them their values, family values, cultural values, and religious values. Try to listen without judging. So we are promoting trust. And if they bring us questions, to be as honest and direct as possible, even if you need to say, no, I don't know that answer. We will call some other expert. Another topic that I think is important, as the same as sexuality too, is also death. Not only on a... So explain to them, as every single living life will be born and die. So for children, we want to confuse them among sleeping and dying, because then they will be afraid of going to sleep. So again, if they tend to think everything goes through them, and they think the moon moves if they move, we need to remember that when somebody that we love dies, it has nothing to do with something they did, they said, or did. Also, so it's not their blame. And then to answer their questions again, honestly, even if the response is, I don't know. So it's important to know that for them that they can speak about death at home. I'm gonna pause a little bit. Maybe there are more questions, Jimena? Jimena says we're gonna go to those. This is the moment that you can write on the Q&A, so we can have them there. You can share this with whoever you like. In this life, our kids will for sure confront with the D's of difficulties and painful. Dolorosas is the D. Disadvantages, deficiencies, distractions, desertion.
Ante ellos, recordaremos
we are going to remember the C words. We want to jump directly to correction. But the correction word is at the end, so we need to start with careful, calm, clarity, control, brain, that is cerebro, heart, corazón. So you need to repeat this as a mantra, she says. Knowing, what is the awareness? Do I know them? Can I comprehend them? With compassion, with communications, we are working in collaboration, and we end up correcting with the correction. So being lecturing all the time doesn't get to correct things. Then vitamin A. It feeds the self-esteem and the learning. And daily we see our kids, big doses of vitamin A, attention, appreciation, aliento, I don't know, to be supportive, to be of help. And then our powerful practices that our grandpas use. Ask questions, ask for things, look for things, or search. And then protest, and she's saying all these sayings, and then to be persistent, sorry. And then the I for instruments that are important. Intelligence, to use your head. Intuition, listen to your heart. Introspection, to know yourself. Inspiration, those thoughts, those words, those people. The intention. Essential elements as examples, expectations, experiences, links, it will be enlaces, links, hopes, self-esteem, and effort. And then hand to hand, because in our hand we have everything we need to help our children to communicate with them. Uno, the thumb, it reminds us to help us communicate. The one in the middle is not to use it as an offensive, it's because it goes directly to the heart. I don't know the names of the fingers, sorry. The one we use a ring is because it compromises, and the little is to observe, to listen, and to breathe. She's using them in her nose and her ears. Our hands, they are very helpful for us to shake hands, to help somebody, to lift somebody, to work. And now we use them to be thankful. And now she's saying all these things again that I really recommend you to Google them because I cannot say them in English. And now she's using about connection with the children in our heart. We will establish a communication, offering supervision and supporting socialization. And there is a help. These are her resources. The link is there. Cuerpo Corazón Comunidad is the website. And there's another website that says Más Malas Noticias, that is called centering.org. How to talk to our children. And she says now she will close her mouth. Sorry, in Spanish sounds kind of rude, but it's not. She's going to be quiet. Going back about depression, one of the comments, how to motivate a teenager that is going through depression, and she's also trying to call for attention, hurting herself physically. something like a tendency to cut her hair, pull her hair, deficiencies in her health that affects her health and also her school's grades. And she's advising her how to communicate and how to compromise with her daughter, how to assist therapists and be supportive in their recuperation, especially with her daughter. So she needs to help her to find help. What helps my daughter? So it's very important, the calling attention. Sometimes we call calling attention like a way of saying she's manipulating me, but no, hurting herself is showing they need help. They are not just calling attention or making some drama. We need to respect when there is no other better way than to deal with a situation. So when they cut themselves, it's not just one problem, but it needs really attention. But also, it's a tool. You need to give them tools to help them cope with those mechanisms to resolve. And in depression, for example, when they don't feel like doing things, we also need to show them how to find ways that you can be more proactive. And then how to avoid abuse of substances. And that comment goes to a deeper, probably, explanation, but this is the best and the quickest way she could answer. So before closing, another topic is my daughter is 5 years old. How good is to talk to them about death at this age? All these topics are not about the topic, but how we talk about those topics. How we are not going to say, like, well, when you get older, we can talk about it. We can talk about anything in different ways. We are not going to speak the same to a child of 5 than to a child of 12 than to a child of 17. So it's about how much they know, how about their interests. It depends on what happened. Sometimes our pet can die, and then you can talk about death. But more important is to know that at this house, we can talk about all the topics. Sometimes the feeling, we put it to themselves. Like sometimes we are sad about something, and then we pass it on them. And we change the subject because we cannot deal with that topic. So then you can start it like, why do you need to know where the question comes from? What do you think about it? So then you start like sharing some examples or this is what I feel, or depending on the situation. But let's say a close member of the family dies, let's say a grandpa or grandma, they say, in our culture, we have a tradition that helps us remember our grandma. So we do this. And then sometimes it's just, what do you need to know? And not to provide more information than what they are asking. So to figure out what they need to know. Because of time, sometimes it's hard, but I want to close with this comment. It's more questions came in, yeah. So thank you very much for your time, for your knowledge. If there is any book in Spanish that you can recommend for us to deal with our children. And again, the examples are set up better than the examples are better than words. and it's very nice to meet you. The website that she mentioned and the ones they are at the end of the presentation with the resources. There you have a lot of articles about raising up children. You can get into that website and it's free, and it will link to other informational and resourceful websites or articles. Because of time, it's 7:30. Mucha people are saying thank you. Everyone that is here will receive a survey, and we hope you can reply that survey. And now she's multitasking, so that's why Jimena's asking to be patient. She's multitasking and in Spanish and in English. We are very thankful to have Doctora Marisol tonight. A few years ago, I met you. Thank you very much for your professionalism. And we want to see more of these conversations and webinars. And she says she was going to show the first aid for mental health book. She's not sure if the Sonoma County is giving it. And there is like a manual. It has a lot of detail, and you can apply these advices also for grown-ups. So anyone interested, as you said, that website, that email. If you want to know better in details, I really would like to encourage you to communicate with us so we can find those answers. Jimena says she's new in this position, but today she's very thankful and she's very happy for this webinar. And she's asking to please reply that survey, and maybe we can invite in another moment to another time. We say good night to everyone. Gracias. Not sure about that. Thank you, everyone. Thank you for all the parents. Ok, lo estoy diciendo en español ahora, en inglés, perdón. Les digo que fue difícil. Entonces, sí, es como todo lo que aprendimos hoy. Ojalá vamos a poner un poquito en práctica y me incluyo yo. Tengo Gracias, doctora Marisol. Que tengas un feliz noche. Muchas gracias a todos también de mi parte. Thank you, everyone. Adiós, goodbye. Adiós.